Hello and welcome to the Digital Juice Bar, the only podcast that'll light your candle because my mom shot the hand and yes I am. I'm Hugly.
I'm KnightmareAlpha, and we have a guest today.
Hello.
Welcome, Daniel Santos, aka Shintai Reviews, from the YouTube channel Daniel Santos. How you doing? Thank you for being here with us.
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
So, you want to give yourself a little introduction?
Sure. Like you just said, my name is Daniel Santos. I make videos. I do stuff on anime and video games. They are primarily video essays. I did one video on Shadow of the Colossus talking about the theme of obsession, and I made a disgustingly long video on school days, analyzing and breaking down the majority of the show while also discussing as an undercurrent its infamy and what inspired that and what caused it to be viewed in such a way. And yeah, that's mainly what I'm about.
That School Days video was really good.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Go check out his channel. Don't actually watch School Days unless you want. I don't have any control over what you watch, but you just go watch his video. It's more entertaining.
I said it before and I say it again. I enjoy watching School Days because it is so bad. It's kind of if you look at it and do it with others, it kind of becomes enjoyable how poorly it is written in some places.
It's like the Room of anime.
Nah, I wouldn't go so far.
Yeah, it's not. I'd say it's way more competent than The Room. But
all right, so it's Gods of Egypt.
I haven't seen that, but that looks
we can make.
But part of the reason why I made it was just because all anyone ever says about the show is, "Oh, that ending, huh?" And "Oh, I hated Makoto." And I felt like, even though School Days, I personally really dislike it, I feel that there's a lot more interesting things to say about it. So I wanted to show, like, hey, look, there's other things to talk about in the show, like good and bad. So, that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to bring more interesting discourse.
Oh, it was neat.
I thank you.
Everyone go check it out.
Great.
All right, so what's everyone been up to recently? Mr. Daniel Santos, would you like to go first? What have you been up to?
Sure. So yesterday, my friend was like, "We're playing Final Fantasy 14. We're doing it," and I'm like, "Oh God, okay, fine." And I ended up like leveling up 17 times because I guess they patched the game recently so that the base game part of it before like the expansions like Heaven's Ward and Stormblood or whatever, like people were complaining that like the base game is like really long and boring, so they patched it so that they made it a lot easier to get through and a lot more quickly. So my friend is like, now is like the perfect time to play it. They've even like bumped the free trial from like 30 levels to 60 levels, and it includes Heaven's Word expansion for free. So it's like, okay, fine, I'll give it a chance. So yeah, I was mostly playing that yesterday, and it was fun. I don't think the game is quite quote unquote clicked with me yet because this is still like the early game, and I feel like the later stuff is where it will start to get like interesting. And a lot of what I'm doing now is like really kind of straightforward, like go here, find this item, give it to this person, go kill a thing. And it's not like especially engrossing, but like
it's an MMO.
Like it gets a lot better. So aside from that, I've also been playing The Last of Us. I beat the first one, and I am now like halfway through the second one. And the way I would describe them without going into too much detail is the second game is as overhated as the first one is overrated. I don't think either of them are nearly as great or as bad as the discourse surrounding them has been. They're pretty okay. They're pretty decent, fun even, and that's about it. I will say the gameplay in the second one has been surprisingly good, better than the first one in my opinion. Adding grass and being able to go prone makes them a lot more fun as stealth games for sure. Well, the second one at least makes it a lot more fun as a stealth game compared to the first one, and I dig stuff like that. So
I think you could do that in like, what was it, like Metal Gear 2?
no, 3. 3 made it. Well, you could technically go prone in 2, but
No, I mean like the MSX game. I think you could go prone in that.
Yeah,
yeah, you can.
Yeah.
I think
But
you
you
could.
couldn't go prone in the first Last of Us. They added that in the second one, and the combination of it with the grass makes it a lot more fun, I feel.
My favorite part of The Last of Us Part 2, even though I haven't played it and I don't really want to play it, is that they put a Vita in there, a PS Vita with Hotline Miami running, and I was like, okay, that's actually pretty cool because I really like Hotline Miami. I
Yeah,
don't know why they
I like that.
specifically picked Hotline Miami, but that's nice.
I don't know. I mean, Naughty Dog has doing this with a lot of their games. Like the Uncharted games had also something like that in them. I think I remember.
Yeah, but like typically, I think they only reference like their own games. Like I remember in Uncharted 4, they played Crash Bandicoot on the PS1 for a while. There were Jack and Daxter stuffed animals in The Last of Us Part 1, I think. It was just weird to see a PS Vita running an indie game from like, what was it, like 2012, 13? It was just weird, but I appreciate that. That was cool.
Cool.
The Nightmare, what have you been up to?
Well, have mostly been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake.
How's that been?
How has this been? I'm actually pretty good. I mean,
I agree.
Did you think
I
Cloud looked?
agree. I think it's pretty good as well.
Mhm.
I
Totally. What do
still
you think?
prefer the original personally, but I think the remake has been an admirable attempt.
I'd
Yeah,
rather play the original just because it's a finished game that I can play in its entirety.
I think Final Fantasy VII Remake is also a finished game. It's just a different aspect of that finished game, and that's totally fine by me, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a finished story, but it does feel like a complete game.
Oh
Like
yeah, I
the
know. I just mean it's weird to remake a thing partially and then release that part when we know that it's only one part of a much bigger game and we're gonna have to wait for the next part and then the part after that. It's just a weird way to release something.
I don't know. Nobody complained about the Lord of the Rings being 3 parts with an incomplete story.
Because it's 3 books.
Yeah,
Yeah,
three
but the
books.
story. Yeah, but the story wasn't finished in one.
Yeah, but this is whatever. So, what do you think, Final Fantasy VII remake? Does
I think
Cloud
it's,
look sexy to you?
Uh, I mean, he's kind of cute, but not in that sense. So, I don't know. It's a good game in general. There's not much to complain. It runs smooth. Combat is okay, but especially early on, it has some problems. Like, it really relies heavily on the fact that you need full parties to make things work. Like, if you only are around with 1 or 2 characters, a lot of the combat is not very enjoyable and doesn't offer you many options. Like, I have been like early on in the game, I have been chugging Phoenix Downs all the time. It's a bit weird.
so my problem with the combat is that there is a clear identity crisis between adhering to the mechanics of the original game while also it being an action game. So the end result is that it refrains from being too technical of an action game in order to incorporate the original mechanics from the original game in a way that makes sense. So
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
It's like it does a little bit of both, but it never goes all the way with either. So it feels like
right. So
like
it,
half
it, it
attempt both.
actually, yeah, it actually feels like it it's it doesn't have the it yeah. You the way you put it was fine. It's a weird mix, and it doesn't quite work.
it's very clear to me that some of the characters got a little bit more attention than others when it comes to the combat. You really you really see that in some of the combat challenges where you can definitely see that Cloud and Tifa are far better designed characters for the action part, where they flow better into each other, have better developed mechanics.
One
Where
has a really, really big sword.
that's not really the point. It's the fact
Yeah,
that
it's still there.
it's just it flows better into each other if you play Barret or Aerith. They have character, they have combat that it doesn't really flow into each other because they're more supported into damage dealing support roles mostly, and you can feel that if you play the combat challenges with them because they really feel a little bit lacking in some of these departments. They don't flow really good into each other. So you really know that if you play the game, they want you to play more Cloud and Tifa as active characters, the rest is more passive. But that means you have to push their speed stat quite high, otherwise they don't really become useful all that much in that
I,
role. So
I think Barrett, when the game forces you to play as him, I don't know if you got to that part yet, but there is a part where later on in the game where you're forced to play as Barrett for a bit, and at first I was like, oh god, I don't want to do this because he's not as fun as Tifa and Cloud, but being forced to play as him actually got me to appreciate his play style more, and I was like, oh okay, there's actually some more nuance to how he plays than I initially realized, and I began to appreciate his play style a bit more.
it's not that I don't like this. I actually like it quite a lot. You would be surprised how often I switch to Barret just because it's really good and effective combat where I don't have to do much flashy stuff. It's not that I have to block all that much or dodge all that much. I can just
You're a
I can
walking
just
turret.
yes, in many sense, and that works out pretty fine. It's just that it's very clear that for the action style, he's not fully suited, and
Yeah,
that's
he works best as an AI partner that's helping you rather than. You know,
You think
otherwise.
the combat would have been better if it leaned more in the direction of something like Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy 15,
Ugh,
where
I
it's
don't.
more action focused?
I mean, it could, but again, the problem that you would have then is that characters like Barret would have really big issues standing out in the combat at all because they're not necessarily supposed to be that. Like how do you make a large man with a Gatling gun as an arm into an interesting action combat character without developing completely new skills or mechanics? And they already did that to a degree because you can play Barret as a melee character if you want.
Hmm.
And even though I don't recommend it, it's kind of weird because he is supposed to be a mostly a ranged character, so that never really worked for me. But in general, I don't think that a more action style is useful unless you want to make a cloud only game.
Didn't they? No, wait, no, that was Crisis Core.
Yeah, and that's also
no, that
not
was Zach.
like that. But in general, yeah, I think it's good. Some of the changes to the story are fine, I guess. Extending a little bit more of the characteristics is useful. Like, there's a little bit more discussions on the actions of Avalanche that is not so much done in the original. Like, there's a little bit more care put into all of it in many places.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the way that the original did it was fine for what it was going for, because for the portion of the game that the remake is adapting, the intention was for it to be very fast paced in the original, and the remake is, it's only focusing on Midgar, so it's deliberately taking its time, and it has a chance to flesh things out further. So it's just a different approach, but
Yeah.
I think for what the remake is trying to accomplish compared to the original, I think in general it works. I don't think all of it works, but I especially did not care for how there's that cutscene right after you finish the first reactor where Barrett is arguing with like that Shinra middle management dude. Like the dialogue in that scene was terrible, and and that scene was perfectly fine in the original. It wasn't nearly like that, so I don't. There are some like decisions here and there that really make me question what they're doing, but I think the remake overall is like they get it. Like especially with Cloud's character, I really feel like okay, they nailed it.
Yeah. What I think is a little bit more hazy is the a little bit overexposure of Sephiroth to the game, what is weird because
So
it's not.
the original intention was to keep Sephiroth more under wraps, but then
Yeah.
They
I mean, everyone knows who Sephiroth is.
Yeah, but they want to really get to that point because they know how much of an important aspect to this game he is. Like so many people think of Final Fantasy VII and think like immediately of Sephiroth and like and Cloud's situation and then what he does and all of that. And it's like they really want to get to that point, but they kind of can't because he's not actually part of that specific aspect of the game. So they kind of try. So they kind of try to push it a little harder.
I still need to play 7 Remake. I haven't because I spend all my money on like manga and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and like there were like 2 games I was looking forward to this year, and I think that was it. So I just haven't gotten around to playing it yet.
Don't need to be sorry, but yeah. Anything else that I could say is like they have an interesting. Some of the changes include these shades that they have around that often attack in some weird situations, and I find that interesting because later on they explain what they are. And for me, it feels like a meta commentary on what the audience expects and what the creators kind of want to, because like all creators want to do something with a story, and if they hand it like that, they are like, let's do our own interpretation of that, and we want to go a little bit away from that. And the shades feel like they represent the fan base of already established, and they're like, no, don't diverge, don't do anything different, we don't like this. And that's kind of what I feel is the commentary here on the shades. I
haven't played it, so I
kind of internalized the shrouds more so as the developers themselves. Like it kind of feels like they represent their own like insecurities about making changes to the game and them wanting to be true to the original, but then they also want to have their own take on it. But oh no, we need to make sure that we respect that tug of war is how I internalize the shrouds.
That could be also a good interpretation, I think. It's an interesting way to do something like that. Definitely, it's interesting. Otherwise, there's really nothing to complain, and I think this game kind of presents what I would describe as the point of what we have as peak graphical capabilities. Like we have reached a peak on graphical capabilities. Like we can still technically improve, but there's really no need anymore. Like there's
what I appreciate about the visuals is that they were able to achieve this like near photorealistic look while still retaining the anime aesthetic of the character and making it work, because that has been done before with disastrous results, like Star Ocean: The Last Hope.
Oh god, I remember that.
Like the graphics in that game, by and large, are actually pretty great. The environments look very beautiful, but some of the character models look just too weird. Like you look at the faces of some of the characters, and they just look
Uncanny Valley.
It's not. No, they actually look like dolls. That's really what it is. Some of them look like dolls.
And they have like these huge glassy looking eyes, and it's just so bizarre.
So yeah, it's it's kind of weird. So I think they kind of pull it off, and that's what impresses me. What on the flip side is also good because that means even if a new tech of a new generation arrives, they don't really have to change much because it already looks pretty good. I mean, how can you improve on that? Like what could you do to make it better? If we have even more detail, I think we kind of don't really need that.
Replace Cloud with an angry, hairy dad and make everyone look like just regular, normal people. That's the AAA way of things.
I don't think so.
It kind of is.
And Cloud is already a dad, kind of.
Nah.
I mean, we still have to accept that Advent Children is technically part of the canon.
I haven't seen Advent Children.
You're not missing much.
Yeah, I would not recommend it. It's usually nice for the fight scenes, but it's as a story, it's just a complete retread of what we already had.
I do remember seeing like clips of it when I was in like elementary school, and I would watch FMVs or AMVs or whatever of Dragon Force songs, and for whatever reason, they used clips from that movie, and it was super weird.
The opening of that movie is already bad because it kind of short sells the whole game. Kind of weird.
I am not a fan of Dragon Force.
I mean, I'm not anymore, but I mean, I was like 10.
No, yeah, like you hear Through the Fire and Flames for the first time, and you're like, oh, I didn't know it could be like this, and then it's like,
yeah, no, it's really kind of these moments where like I had this where I was like, so there is what this meme song comes from, and I was like already listening to it and like, oh yeah, it's good for these few chords that you can use in a meme song, but the rest of them is like, ugh, why?
Or testing yourself at Guitar Hero.
Yeah, I mean, I just find that kind of, I think, power metal, I think is what it's called. I just find that genre to be too cheesy for my tastes.
It depends.
Weirdly enough, I really dig Visual K now, which is kind of like Japanese glam punk metal. I don't know. There's something about it that I just find more appealing.
Hey, you do you. Like,
yeah.
Me personally, it's just not for me.
That's fine.
Okay, so what have you been up to?
Last week I went down to the rental store and got 4 movies because there's a video rental store near my house, and I wanted to watch some movies, so I did that. And then I watched all 4 of them, and then I got 4 more yesterday.
Nice. Cool. That's a lot of movies.
I got were Black Klansman, Mandy, Parasite, and Knives Out, and I watched them in that order.
Okay.
I loved Parasite. That is a fantastic.
Yeah, Parasite was amazing. It might actually be like one of the best movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Performances were great. I really liked the soundtrack and the cinematography. I'm trying to study like how to like analyze media more. So when I actually tried like looking at the screen and like actually trying to see the screen, and I was like, okay, I see what you did there, Bong Joon-ho. I understand what you did. I like that. That's cool. I really liked the moment where they have to go from the house and they have to run all the way back to their home, and they're like literally descending into poverty. And I thought that's a neat visual metaphor. And like the first time they see the house and it's presented like this own little like bubbled personal heaven kind of thing, and I was like, okay, that's cool. There are just so many cool shots, so many neat uses of I think the word is reincorporation. The message behind it is, I'm not entirely sure if it'll be like something that'll last for like decades, like maybe in like 20 years or so. Maybe it won't be, I mean, maybe not 20, but like for now, it's a really powerful message, and it's presented like crazy well. The ending was kind of bonkers, but I mean, I watched it and I was like, oh my gosh, that's actually really depressing. So yeah, that was probably the best like not objectively, but like, objectively, air quotes, the best movie that I saw of the bunch. But Knives Out was probably my favorite that I watched. It's the one that I want to watch again the most. Because it also had a lot of really cool shots. Daniel Craig's voice was super weird because he talked like Foghorn Leghorn, and it was really distracting. Like, why are you talking like that, Daniel Craig? We don't get a lot of mystery movies nowadays. Like nowadays, it's either like superhero movies or really bland comedies. I don't know. Maybe I'm not looking that hard, but we don't get a lot of mysteries, especially not murder mysteries. So I was really excited to watch that because, like, I freaking love Ace Attorney, and I don't know, I like the mystery. Super well acted. I thought the setting was really cool. The story was really neat. It has to be because it's a murder mystery, and it was just the most fun movie that I watched. You guys seen Knives Out?
No, unfortunately not. But I do plan on it. I've heard good things.
It's a lot of fun. Mandy was something.
Nick Cage movie. What do you expect?
I mean, I knew it was a Nick Cage. Well, it's not a Nick Cage movie. It's a movie with Nicolas Cage in it, and it's really freaky. So this one is about Nicolas Cage being crazed, maybe not crazed, but a lumberjack in like the middle of nowhere, taking revenge on a group of sadomasochistic bikers and a hippie cult led by a failed folk singer who killed his girlfriend with like an axe. Like he makes an axe, and it's just like, that's a cool axe. It's just, and then the whole thing is like, I don't want to watch it again, but like it was a good movie. You ever feel that? Like, I'm very uncomfortable watching this, and I never want to see it again. I'm kind of glad I watched it, but like, no, I don't want to see it again.
Yeah, Grave of the Fireflies.
Oh,
Great movie. Don't want to ever see it again.
Yeah, it's too depressing even for me.
Yes, way too much.
That movie. Well, this is. I don't want to see this again for a very different reason. Just because it's so, like, I guess anxiety inducing. Because it's just like super bright and loud, and it's a weirdly slow burn until they actually get to the crazy stuff. And when they do get to the crazy stuff, it's just like super freaky, and I never want to see it again. But good movie. I don't know if it would be better if I was high when I watched it. I don't know if that would make it better or significantly more terrifying. I don't really want to find out.
Depends on what kind of stoner you are.
I mean, I'm not. I don't take drugs.
Well,
if I were to take anything, I'd probably just do weed because I don't know. That doesn't seem so bad. But like if I was to get high and watch a movie, it wouldn't be Mandy. It wouldn't be the one where Nicolas Cage like stabs people in the mouth with the pointy end of an axe. And like someone like it's just a freaky movie. And like there was one scene where one of the biker dudes who look like they're cosplaying reject Cenobites. So he's just like watching porn on an old boxy TV, and it's super boring porn, by the way. It's just like it looks like it's just repeating the same 1 second over and over and over again. And he's got a huge pile of cocaine on the table in front of him. And he's just like, what am I watching? What is this? This is so weird. And then Nick Cage kills him. And then he picks up a shard of glass. And then he snorts the coke and then does some LSD. And I'm just like, okay. I'm probably not going to watch this movie ever again. But, like, it was good.
One of my friends recommends as a contrast movie to that, Midsummer.
No. But like,
Nope.
if I'm gonna get high and watch a movie, I'd rather watch something funny like Harold and Kumar. I guess that'd probably be a good option.
Oh, these movies haven't aged very well.
I mean, it seems like it'd be a neat movie to get high to, because I wouldn't want to watch something like Good Time. I actually really love Good Time. That's a fantastic movie. I wonder what would happen if I like smoked weed and watched the Grand Budapest Hotel. I wonder what that would be like.
I don't know, kind of boring, I think.
I mean, I love the Grand Budapest Hotel. Oh, I've got all those weird like martial arts movies.
Actually, they go really well with being stoned, I can tell you.
Cool. I'll make a bunch of nachos. Maybe one day I'll move to Canada, make a bunch of nachos, and then just spend an entire day like getting blazed and just watching my kung fu movies.
Drunken Master 3 was great on beer and weed.
I didn't know there was a 3. I thought they stopped at 2.
Potentially that's just a rename thing, you know. It's kind of hard. Anyway,
the last movie I watched was actually it was the first movie I watched was Black Klansman, and you know Spike Lee, his batting average isn't the best, but when he does make a joint, weirdly enough, didn't mean for that, but there you go. You can clearly tell he puts a lot of effort into those movies, and I thought it was really good. Really, I think it had a lot of really cool shots. I remember this one time where the main character Ron Stallworth and David Duke, the Grand Wizard of the KKK, were talking on the phone, and like both of their shots were at Dutch angles, and one time the screen was split diagonally down the middle, and then you saw both of them, but their Dutch angles were going like against each other. I thought that was a really cool shot. That was really neat. Adam Driver gives a great performance. Like honestly, he's probably one of the most. He's probably one of the best actors in Hollywood right now because he was fantastic in this movie. I heard he was really good in Marriage Story and Patterson. I still need to watch those. But like he was really good. I thought he did a really good job. Also, there was one guy who I thought was Steve Buscemi, but it turns out I think it's like his brother or something. Solid performances all around. I really liked the soundtrack. It's surprisingly funny, and it did remind me that the KKK is just they're really stupid because like their hoods look dumb, and their leader is called the Grand Wizard. And at some point, I really just have to wonder, they have no self-awareness, do they?
oh yes, they have. Believe me, they exist today.
Yeah, but like their leader is the Grand Wizard.
Yes.
That sounds like a bunch of kids playing make believe, not a bunch of like I don't even.
Their second in command is the Grand Dragon.
Oh my gosh, that's even worse.
I know.
How can they be so lacking in like self-awareness? Like you think we should call them something that isn't completely stupid and like nah, people will take us seriously and like yeah, there are people that do take them seriously, but I really have to question why. Also, Topher Grace was really weird playing David Duke because like I know him for Spider-Man, and I think he was Spider-Man. Wasn't he Spider-Man in the Sam Raimi films? Topher Grace?
No.
I thought he was.
It was Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I know him for that 70s show. Like, I know him from something else. Oh, yeah, he was in Spider-Man 3. He was Eddie Brock.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I knew he was like some part of those Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. I just didn't know which. I got him mixed up with Tobey Maguire. But like I know him for being like Eric Foreman on that 70s show. And it was just so weird seeing him like that. but yeah, that was also a pretty good movie, and it's a really like jarring, not necessarily a jarring tonal shift, but like, okay, Spike Lee, I see why you made this now, because like at the end, like the rest of it is like it's a fairly serious kind of comedy drama thingy, but it's like mostly kind of lighthearted, which is weird to say given the subject matter. And then you get to the end, and it's like it cuts to like protest footage and stuff like that, and like the orange who shall not be named not really doing anything about it, and it's just like wow, okay, that was a good way to end this. Good on you, Spike Lee. Your Old Boy remake still sucks, but this was good. This was really good. So good on Spike Lee. And those are my thoughts on Black Klansman. I recommend all of them, except maybe Mandy. Watch that one at your own risk. Maybe look up some information first and see if it's not too intense for you. And if I were to give each of them a rating, I'm like out of 10, I'd give Black Klansman an 8 out of 10. Mandy, I would give a 7 to 7.5. I'm not entirely sure. Parasite would get a 10, and then Knives Out would get a 9. So, yeah, that's what I did. I watched 4 movies, and now I have Dirty Harry, Enter the Dragon, Isle of Dogs by Wes Anderson. He's like my favorite director. And, crap, it was Sweeney Todd. So I'm going to watch those 4 this week. Also, I showed those movies to my brother, and I asked him if he wanted to watch any, and he just said, I won't watch Enter the Dragon or Isle of Dogs, even though Isle of Dogs is just the title's written in Japanese, because they're from Asia. And he says the reason he's not going to watch any Asian movies except Parasite is because I showed him Old Boy. And that's incredibly close-minded.
Well, Enter the Dragon is an American film.
Yes. I think it was a co-production. I don't really remember that, but it's not actually that bad of a movie, I think.
Enter the Dragon is a really fun kung fu movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's not going to watch it cuz it has Bruce Lee, and he's Asian, and he doesn't want to watch anything with Asian in it.
Right?
Not because he's racist, but because I showed him Old Boy.
That makes no sense.
I know. Like that, Old Boy is a fantastic movie. Not Spike Lee's Old Boy. That's terrible. But like Korean Old Boy.
Did he really dislike Old Boy?
What?
Did he dislike Old Boy?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like when I watched it, all I could say was that was weird. And then last night, I asked him why he just doesn't want to watch Enter the Dragon or anything like that, and he said it's because Old Boy is the most depressing movie he's ever seen. And I'm like, you really need to expand your horizons. Like, seriously?
But Enter the Dragon isn't depressing at all. You just see...
Yeah, but like because I showed you Old Boy, you won't watch Enter the Dragon? Really? Really? You won't even watch Isle of Dogs because the title is written in Japanese?
What does he think Asian movies look like?
I don't know. I guess he thinks they're all like Old Boy, but like he'll watch Parasite?
I
don't understand that.
I don't know. That's weird.
Like I really don't understand that. Like I'm pretty sure he knows that not all movies from a specific country are the exact same. Like I'm pretty sure he doesn't think all movies from America are corny action movies. But like because I showed you Old Boy, you're going to assume that all Asian movies are incredibly depressing.
I am no longer going to watch any anime because Grave of the Fireflies was too sad. High School DxD, not going to watch it because Grave of the Fireflies.
He doesn't even want to watch anime, actually. I think it's just because he, like, I don't know why. I think he just hates anime.
Well, I was just making a joke. But...
Yeah, I know. But, like, He just doesn't like anime. Like, I don't get the logic behind that at all. Like, okay, you'll watch Parasite because you've heard a lot of good things about it, but you won't watch Enter the Dragon because you saw a critically acclaimed revenge movie that was supposed to be kind of sad and depressing and bittersweet. You're just
Some people are just like that. I remember when back in the day when I was with a film student and we watched movies together with a large group of film students all the time. And he decided, and one of the Chinese students said, like, I would like to show you to show you all Hero with Jet Li. And I was like, okay. So I got the movie for everybody. We watched. Everybody was fine, but somewhere in the middle of a movie, some of them just run out. And I asked the guy who was sitting next to him, why did he run out? And he said, like, oh, the moment they started flying, he was like completely like, this is bullshit, and got out. I get a duck.
I don't have Hero. I have White Snake and the Sorcerer, I think, which also has Jet Li.
But it's kind
I also
of
have the
weird.
Once Upon a Time in China trilogy, which also has Jet Li.
But yeah, I don't
was-
get it. Some people are just like that. They say like, oh, this is too stupid. This is too pretentious. This is too that. And I'm like,
But the weird thing is, like, Old Boy is really, really, really good. Like, it's really good. Like, yeah, it's sad, but like, you liked Hachi A Dog's Tale, but you don't like Old Boy. And you won't watch any Asian movies because I showed you Old Boy.
I mean, we're just going in circles.
yeah,
Like,
I know, it's such nonsensical logic. I don't understand it.
no, I get it. It doesn't make much sense, but we're not gonna suddenly figure it out by just going like, huh. But
Yeah, I
it's
guess.
like we get it. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, sorry about that.
but
We
yeah,
should probably get to the actual topic of the that we were going to talk about.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
it's okay.
So we're going to talk about Shonen Jump, and like specifically. Also, I have news from Shonen Jump. Another series got canceled today. Like it has its final chapter, Time Paradox Ghost Rider, and it only has 14 chapters.
oi.
And we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about Guardian of the Witch, a series that ended 2 months ago, about a little over 2 months ago, that got canceled very early on. It only had 19 chapters, and we're going to just talk about, like, Shonen Jump and the general problems with popularity in, serialized manga magazines and stuff like that. So, what do you guys think of Guardian of the Witch? Nightmare and I actually did like a first thoughts on the first 3 chapters, and I said that, like, it's okay, but like I wanted to see more of it because there could be some potentially neat ideas.
So I couldn't finish it. I think I read like 6 chapters and I put it down, and I was like, I did not enjoy that. I thought it was very amateurish, very rushed. I thought a lot of the dialogue was it really smacked of that like amateurish style of writing where characters would explain things to each other that they should already know for the sake of the audience because the writer couldn't find out a better way to explain the same information in a way that naturally flowed in the narrative. I think it had a lot of interesting ideas. Like I could see the foundations of what could have been an interesting story. There were the building blocks were there, but I don't think the writer was adept enough to put the pieces together in an interesting way. A lot of it came across as very rushed. There was a lot of sequences that felt like it was just like, okay, boom, we're doing this, boom, we're doing this, boom, doing this. Instead of giving the characters a chance to breathe, like I feel like in the beginning, especially. I mean, I say the beginning. All I read was the beginning, but like,
Yeah, I think you read like the first 5 chapters, and then I told you to go back and read the last chapter, and you
yeah.
did.
So like, to give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about, where like the stuff isn't given a chance to breathe. Uh, we're told very early on that witches are like are tainted and that eventually the evil consumes them and then they're going to die and that the purpose of the guardian is to kill the witch. I feel like
Before she
that's
turns into an evil, which is like
right.
the dumbest name for a monster ever.
I agree. Evil is a shitty name. I was thinking that as I was reading. I was like, what a terrible name. But this feels like a reveal that would happen like 3/4 of the way through the story, like Final Fantasy X, right? Like 3/4 of the way into the story is when we find out that Yuna is, in case anyone hasn't played FF10, I won't spoil it, but like there is a reveal concerning Yuna towards the end of the story, and this is the same caliber of like plot point that you would expect at that point in the narrative, and it is casually dropped so early on, and then the main character is then told to kill this girl that he's been looking after, who he's the
Manasva.
guardian. And it's like I don't have any chance. I have not had the chance to get acquainted with these characters yet to then suddenly be emotionally invested in her death or the conflict that the main character would have with now being tasked with killing her. We have not seen we haven't even seen enough of their relationship for us to buy into him wanting to betray the whatever the organization that they're even working for is called. I don't even know. Like
I think it's called the Rectory. No, wait, I think that's the building thing.
I'm not
I don't
totally.
think they ever name it. Aside from like the city state in general, but I think they mostly introduce the whole, she'll turn into an evil, which is
Mhm.
still dumb, but you have to kill her first. I think they do that mostly as a kind of like I guess that would be the call to adventure, because they have to leave the city state, and they have to be like, okay, if she does magic too much, she will turn into an evil monster called an evil. So you gotta either kill her now or kill her later. I think that's supposed to be the call to adventure, because it gives them a reason to like escape and like.
I get that. I get that's supposed to be the inciting incident for the main story, but you need time for these events to breathe so that we can actually get invested in the characters and to care about them, to even know what they're like. Like we get almost nothing. Like all I know about the main character is that he doesn't like witches and he wants to make a world where like witches aren't a thing anymore. And the witch that he's taking care of is kind of a brat.
Yeah. And
Like
that's all you need to know about him, apparently. Like the main dude is default anime protagonist shonen dude with sword.
yeah, and I also didn't like how he's like super strong already, and the only explanation we get is like, oh, he just trained a lot. He's just like trained like a motherfucker, and
And then we realize that no, he's actually not that great.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. They kind of spent like 3 chapters on this weird fight that goes exactly nowhere, and it's like, why?
It feels like they wanted to. It feels like that was supposed to happen a little bit later. I kind of would have liked to see Fafnir, the main dude. I would have liked to see him fight more with his sword, while Manasva actually learns how to use her magic more appropriately, so that when they actually do figure out how to put it together, it's a little more gratifying. But then they just meet the witch doctor dude, who looks like a witch doctor. Like, I don't know. I think that's the first thing I thought of when I saw him, and he's just like, okay, I fought you for a couple days with off-screen training. You can now do the thing that you probably shouldn't do right now, but we're gonna let you do it anyway. I don't know. That feels like it kind of cheated there. I do kind of like how they explained how that works though, because like the guardian dude is like, okay, I can use your magic, and if you use it through me, then you don't have to use as much, but I can still get a lot of mileage out of it. Like I kind of like that. That kind of makes sense.
It feels like they weren't really sure how to start the whole setup. That's really what feels it like. Like they wanted to have this kind of runaway story. Okay, I get that. But what really feels like is that they weren't really ready with all of the mechanical stuff. They hadn't worked this out. It feels like they did not do a lot of effective pre-production for this. Like this really showcases like they didn't do like an effective test run. They only worked on the character designs, and that's mostly it, because it just doesn't seem like they really wanted to know where it goes. Like if you would go for like the first 5 or 6 chapters to stay just at home and see what happens, like you put them both together, they learn how all of this works and realize while that their bosses are evil, that they want to potentially kill that, and they're like, okay, like we have now chapter 5, we have established like a status quo, but we realize that it's bad, and we're like, okay, now is the point, you have to kill her. And I'm like, no. Like he's just like straight up no and says, no, we're going. And then this whole happens. I think that would work in general a lot better. You know?
Mm-hmm.
That would have more set it up. And it's not like you can't do that. I mean, just having like a dude and a girl to protect a city for a while sounds actually like a pretty decent story that you could go for. You could, like, if you wanted, you can go into the details of how does the city look, how is it built. A lot of people like that. I mean, that's how One Piece often likes to describe their places, give you maps where they are, make distance important and stuff like that. So you can play in some classic established tropes here if you want to. So it's like, but it seemed like they didn't really do that. It felt like this was a very early first draft.
I feel like they needed more time with their editor, or just like, I don't know.
I don't know how they got
Fantasy worlds are hard because it feels like if you make something that's like fantasy or science fiction, you need to like really pin down how everything works so that you can properly explain it. Like, I think that's a big reason as to why people like Ancient Magus's Bride. I can't remember if that's the title. And like the certain like scientific railgun or magical index series, because they actually explain, reasonably how everything works.
Well, I think that's a problem. That's a problem that I have with a lot of like anime and manga, especially, is that they spend a little too much time explaining how the world works instead of finding a more natural way to like convey how it all works.
You don't have to like actually explain it, but I just mean like, so you yourself as the creator know how things work, and you just explain what you need to, show what you need to, but like for the most part they don't need to know. I don't know.
Naruto does this in one chapter. 3 panels at best, nothing more.
Like
and the rest is filled with flashbacks and monologues.
Please don't.
Like as much of a fan of I am of the Fate series, for example, like even like the visual novel that I dearly love is kind of guilty of this, where in the prologue especially, they spend a lot of time just like sitting you down and being like, okay, we need to explain how this shit works. And it can be boring to just sit there and read like literally just the author just like explaining at you like, this is how the world works, this is how magic works, this is how the servants work, blah 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 blah. And I just feel like in a lot of anime and manga that they spend way too much time like how the world works, when the most important thing about a story are the characters and the events of the plot, and how the characters interact with the plot, and the world building, in my opinion, should be a way to like help convey the messages and the themes that the author is trying to get across, and how they interact with the characters in interesting ways. But then when you get bogged down with the explanations of things, then you're just taking time away from the important things, which are messages, the themes, the characters, their interactions, how it affects them, their development, all that good stuff.
You think Death Note is probably a good example because they only have to explain a thing instead of an entire world?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
It is very simple to explain. I mean, on the surface, it's just write a name into a book, person dies. That's a
Yeah, and then
very
they continuously add more rules to be a
yes.
little more specific, but it's never like, okay, here's like every single rule in the Death Note. Okay, you got it? Okay, we're gonna reiterate these when it's relevant, but like no, it's just like write a name they die, but you have to know their face as you're writing their name. It has to be their actual name, and if you want, you can write a method of how they die. But if not, they'll just die of heart attack. Like, I guess it's easier to explain a single item and how it works than an entire world. But yeah, even in terms of like world building and how it works in manga, Guardian of the Witch doesn't really do a good job at it, but it did have some neat ideas. It's kind of a shame we didn't get to see any of them realized, but
yeah,
it
that
had
was
neat
the thing.
ideas.
Like, I felt like I said before, there was the feel of a good story that could have sprung from Guardian of the Witch. Like it
I
had a lot of
sincerely
building.
feel. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I sincerely feel like if it managed to get some traction, it would have been a really solid, enjoyable, snacky little like 10 to 12 volume series.
Yeah, but
And that's it.
yeah,
Like something you could pick up maybe at like a sale at a bookstore or something over a while, and you're like, hey, this series isn't super long, I guess I'll pick this up. So you pick it up and then you read it on like a lazy afternoon while eating pretzels or whatever you want to snack on, and then you put it back on your shelf, and you're satisfied enough with it. And then maybe a little while later you pick it back up, you flip through it, you put it back on your shelf. It feels like a series that would have been really good to just kind of have in the background to pick up every now and then and be basically satisfying. But
sure.
no, 19 chapters.
Like, I feel while you can say like, oh, we've seen this before, whatever, but I think the relationship between the main character and the witch, like that initial setup of like, oh, they're opposites and they don't get along, but eventually they slowly start to understand each other. Like, yeah, you could say like, well, we've seen that before, but it could have still made for, a fun little relationship to see blossom. But like they try to run through it so quickly that by the time the main character is forced to kill her, I don't feel that there's enough that was shown in their relationship for us to buy into him like wanting to then turn around and save her, because all that we've seen of their relationship up to this point is them being annoyed with each other. And then he just so happens to very conveniently listen in on a conversation between her and her maid, or whatever her
The
that.
convenience of anime eavesdropping.
Yeah, he happens to hear her talk about like, oh, I actually thought like, wow, he's just like me, blah blah blah, like, and that was enough for him to be like, no, I'm gonna save her now, and it feels very forced.
It
It's
would
a
have been a lot.
convenient.
Oh, sorry.
It's a bit too convenient, I would say. I
Very
mean,
convenient.
it's not unnecessarily not unnecessarily implausible. Like he is the guardian, he has to be around all the time, so it's not impossible. Especially if you could have established him as an eavesdropping kind of guy, like a little bit too much. Okay, I have to keep her safe. If he is a little bit too like focused on that, that would have made little bit more sense. If he was like a more, I would say, a more tactical approach to this, like these creatures can come up everywhere and all the time, you need to be careful, you need to survey the situation. If they would have put that into the character, I would have thought it a little bit easier.
But we can't have him be smart and, clever and tactical. He's the protagonist of a Shonen Jump action series.
You could also frame it as creepy.
Yeah.
I've never really liked the argument of like, well, it's technically possible. Like, yes,
Anything's
sure.
technically possible.
It's like, yeah,
not
sure,
anything. Like,
but that doesn't mean it's compelling. Like,
No, that's a point why I gave a better compelling reason how you could make it more natural to fit into the story.
yeah, it reminds me of that scene in Code Geass where like that guy Mao, I think his name was, he gets shot like a million times, but then like in a couple episodes later he comes back and the explanation is like, oh, it's science, technology, whatever. But then like Euphemia gets shot once and then she's dead. It's like,
Yes.
is that technically possible? Sure. I don't care. It's not plausible, and
It makes no sense.
but you can't prove it didn't happen. The common
No.
argument of prosecutors in Ace Attorney.
It's just it's unlikely because Mao is just a terrorist running around. He has access to basically nothing. And you have the princes of a major nation in the country, in the world, and it's like one of the most technologically advanced nations at that. And you're like, the terrorists had access to better technology than the princes of a large nation. That's just
That doesn't
implausible.
make any sense.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Code Geass, by the way, so
Maybe don't.
I don't know.
Yeah, don't bother.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, again, it really makes clear. But I think Guardian of the Witch makes very clear that you need to know where you want to go with your story. Maybe pre-produce a little bit more. I know that Shonen Jump is all about the quick turnaround and the fast-paced week-by-week storytelling and so on. But I think a good series benefits from knowing where it wants to go, what it can do with it, and maybe just test it out a bit. Not just in the sense of, oh, I'm showing this, just make it. Like, say like to your producer, like your spot's coming up in 6 months, and you're like, yeah, I pre-produced some chapters and just make multiple drafts. That
Well, I
really.
mean, they do. They have to submit storyboards to the serialization meeting.
But the problem is like they seemingly did not really do that effectively in this for long term. I don't know how this got greenlit. That's the real question I have. Like,
I mean, I have no idea how a lot of stuff gets greenlit in Jump, and a lot of the stuff that's more interesting that does get greenlit usually gets canceled. So what do we know?
I mean, in a sense, it's probably also the factor that Shonen Jump is very, very stuck with their own opinions of things.
Which we're
Like,
going to talk about, and after we, discuss Guardian of the Witch.
yeah. I mean, we can transition into that if we want to now.
I guess. Although I do want to say, like, I do think it would have been a lot more interesting to have it be less of a road trip movie and instead more of a mystery series, I guess. Like, have them actually like slowly unveil things about the evilness of the government and stuff like that, and the actual origin of the witches. Like, that would have been a lot neater. Would have been a lot cooler. Would have given us more time. So yeah. It was probably just too fast-paced for its own good.
A lot of people will complain about something being too slow, but I would actually prefer something being too slow than too fast, because when something is too fast, like The Rise of the Skywalker, Star Wars Episode 9, I thought that movie was way too fast, and it was just shoving garbage in my face constantly, and I was just like, what is this? That doesn't make sense. What are you doing?
You don't want to overload the viewer with too much stuff, but at the same time, you don't want to make it so long periods go by without anything actually happening. Pacing's really hard to do.
Sure, but in Guardian of the Witch's case, it felt like it wanted to have its big epic moments, and it didn't want to earn them. It wanted to just get there as quickly as possible, and then be like, look at this big fight scene, and it's.
It wanted to be potato chips.
And it doesn't have any weight behind it. There's no emotional resonance
to it. There's no really adequate build up to make the things look cool. And like, whoa, that just happened. It's more like, oh, that happened.
Because a fight is only interesting if you actually are invested in the of course you can have a well choreographed fight and you can appreciate the choreography on its own merits, but in terms of telling a story, the significance of a fight is tied back to your investment in the characters, their relationship with each other. And if there is none, if you don't care about the characters that are fighting, then it's just a fight, and uh, there's no connection there.
Hajime no Ippo does a great job with its fights because it's all about boxing. Those have really good fights.
But even they have build up.
Yeah, that's why they have good fights. It's like everyone has a reason for fighting, and you can be like, okay, that's why they're doing that. That's why they're doing that. And then you actually get to the fight, and it's like super incredibly intense. But if they just cut, okay, Ippo, here's who you're fighting next, and then they like spend a chapter or two just like watching Ippo train and never interacting with the guy he's about to fight, it would lose so much of its impact. And then for them to just like chapter training, cut to the boxing match, and then just have the fight, it wouldn't be as interesting. Like imagine Megalobox, but we never got to see Yuri do anything outside of just boxing.
I mean, I've never seen Ippo, but I believe you. Like that sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean, you don't go for over 1,000 chapters without being, probably doing something right.
I don't know. We still have Fairy Tail.
I thought that ended.
It did, but kind of not. Like, I really don't think that Hiro Mashima ever stopped writing it. It's still there. It's now called Eden Zero. It's just still. I don't know.
I miss the Mashima who made Rave Master.
Eh,
That was good.
it's okay.
Also, for some reason, the English dub had a theme song by Real Big Fish. That was weird.
The German opening of X, the series, was done by Nightwish.
I don't know who that is.
Nightwish?
Yes, I know.
Who's Nightwish?
Just
Are
a
they
band.
emo? They sound emo.
They're like symphonic rock.
It's a Scandinavian goth symphonic metal kind of thing band. It's weird.
Like they're not really my thing personally. They're a little too cheesy for my taste.
Yeah, it's kind of
a little
weird.
too over the top. But they're not a bad band. They're good.
Yeah. But yeah, that was Guardian of the Witch. It was
a thing.
It could have been better. It could have been at least okay for to run for 2 years maybe, and then just release his volumes and flip through them on a lazy day, and it would have been fine like that. Like it had some neat concepts, but then it got axed, and then you only got to chapter 19, and then something happens, skip forward 5 years, and then oh, everything is magically fixed, and it feels so empty, man.
It's definitely looked like they had only canceled it so little in advance that we're like, oh, that the writer was like, oh no, I don't know how to end this. Let's skip to the end. Just I mean, he was already on the fast track to make everything of that work in super speed. So let's do the ultimate Sonic speed run and just go to the end,
And
it's at least in theme.
Yeah, I guess. If only Black Clover ended that quickly.
It's unlikely.
Yeah.
Now it's not even. I think it's now unkillable.
I mean, yeah, because it's one of the new big three, the things that I was going to make a video about, but then Kimetsu no Yaiba ended, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to. At least Kimetsu no Yaiba ended. That was a cool thing. That's actually probably. I feel like that was the thing that Guardian of the Witch wanted to be more. If you think about it, because main swordy dude, who was very dutiful and stuff like that, and the girl who could potentially turn into a monster, but she has crazy cool fire magic.
I don't know. We have more to deal with the fact that Act H looks like it's going to be cancelled.
Oh, it was canceled.
Oh, already good.
Yeah,
That was
and then the artist took all like connections to the series off her Twitter account or something like that. I think they removed it from one of their services, and I don't think they're going to publish any more volumes in English. They might. I don't know, which is a shame because it was a unique series.
Yeah,
Like
but the scandal.
yeah, I mean
Yeah.
a drama series about that centers on an actress. That's really unique.
Yeah, it's too bad. We can't do anything about this. Worst case, the worst thing about this is no matter if a scandal is real or not, the Japanese legal system has already made their decision.
Yeah. But we're not talking about Act Age and its reasons for cancellation. Now we're going to talk about after like an hour, we're actually going to get to the thing that I wanted to talk about. I am sorry for rambling for so long.
Hey, it's your podcast.
Yeah, I know, but I was hoping to make this one a bit shorter. I don't know. But we're going to talk about like the main reasons why so many new series get canceled so quickly, even if they have potential. And that's just like the general, maybe not problems, but like the kind of problems with like popularity in a magazine or some kind of regularly serialized magazine like Weekly Shonen Jump. And the reason why like series that look like they could be good just never get any traction and they end up getting axed and they just never reach their full potential because they're in a magazine that has such big names like One Piece and Bleach and Naruto and Kimetsu no Yaiba and Black Clover and not JoJo anymore. What's running now? Because like a lot of stuff ended recently.
I don't know what all is in Jump right about now.
All right, let's see. The big titles in there now are Black Clover. Wait, Burn the Witches. Oh yeah, Burn the Witch. That's the new Taikubo story. Black Clover, Chainsaw Man, Doctor Stone, Jujutsu Kaisen, My Hero Academia, One Piece, and We Never Learn, which should be wrapping up soon. Like those are the things they have to compete with. And like before the current lineup, they had to deal with like Naruto and Bleach and just like all those big name titles. And we're here to talk about like the problems with that. And I'm sorry it took so long to actually get to the point.
Well, so where do we start? What is problem number one?
I think we have to establish how exactly they determine like what series get in like the order and stuff like that. So since I read Bakuman several times, I'll explain how it works. So in Weekly Shonen Jump, they have these reader surveys, and the readers like fill out which 3 series they like the most, and then they send them in. They count the votes, and then they're like, at the beginning of the week, the editorial office is like, okay, here's where you are in the rough ranking, in like the 20 series that are currently in the magazine, and then they like give a more official count, and then it's like, okay, here's your placement. Like, actually, in the grand total, here's where you are. This is how you stack up against the other series in the minds of our readers. And then, like, every, I think, 2 months. Yeah, 2 months. I remember because in one arc, they had to come up with a new series in half a year, and there were 3 serialization meetings. They hold serialization meetings where all the editors get together and discuss the new potential series from, like, the storyboards that are handed into them. And then they debate about, okay, well, should this get a series? Should this get a series? And should this get a series? And then they determine how many that they can start. And then they see what can end. And it's usually the ones that have been lower in the ratings. And then if one gets canceled so they can make room for a new series, they call up the artist and be like, okay, you have this many chapters left. That's it. And that's how the cycle works in Weekly Shonen Jump. They start new series from a handful of storyboards, typically the first 3 chapters, and then They go on for a couple weeks, and as long as they're in the magazine, they'll get feedback from readers according to how they rank in the magazine compared to everything else. And then they just kind of keep doing that until they're not popular enough to keep running, so they can replace it with something else. And that's how it works. So it's a meritocracy in a sense.
I mean, if you want to describe it like that, sure.
I mean, it kind of is.
I don't know. It's not really dependent on merit. It's more dependent on popularity.
All right, my bad.
But yeah, that's kind of a point. So the question is, how do you get even in the cycle? I mean, where do you start? I mean, normally the people who get even selected to be part of a process of selection usually come from are either established writers and some people who come from outside or win contests. That's usually how you get in.
Mm-hmm.
So we already know, but we also know that most of the writers are either very long running in the biz or are already just very young people that basically get their first step in the magazine. Usually, like that's basically how it goes. They usually have before that only either one shots that they get as a reward for the contest wins. That's what they get. They get a contract and a one shot usually. That's, for example, how Masaki Kishimoto got this stuff with Naruto. He had a one shot published of another series that he had, and not a series, just a work. It was just a one shot, and after that he got to work on Naruto.
And now the anime community has a pretty common punching bag.
We are too cruel. Anyway, but that's how it goes. So we know how it goes. So okay, so what's the problem here?
I think the main problem is that it's so hard to actually get traction because, like, unless your series is like an immediate hit and just like gets super high in the popularity rankings immediately and can keep up that ranking for at least stay in the top 10 for a while in order to build up a decent fan base so you can secure yourself a number of votes, you're probably going to be screwed because there are already so many series in the magazine that have established fan bases who are probably going to vote for the series that's just their favorite, regardless of whether the chapter was actually, that good or not. And, since you only can think, I think it's like 3 or 4, you have to pick 3 or 4, and like each one counts as a vote. So it's not like if you get first place in a reader survey poll, you get like 3 points. If you get 30, you get 1 point. No, it's just like each one counts for a point.
That's a pretty weird system. I mean, why not make a survey where you rank all of the series in order from best to least favorite? That gives you a more accurate view of how people see it. Like maybe that series this week is not that great, but and switches places and stuff like that. That would be like a more interesting system. If you just have like 3 votes or something like that, it's just not really working out. You don't get a real picture for everything.
I actually
tradition. That's why. It's how it's always been. So that's how it's got to be.
But that's not really helpful if you want to have a good and accurate reader base. I mean, I know it's all about the money and the biz. I'm pretty sure a satisfied reader that says, "Yeah, I know it's not my best, my one of my 3 favorites, but it's my 4th favorite. Why does it have to go?" You know.
I think I actually heard that argument from Shinta Fukuda from I think like volume. It was either 3 or 5. I think it was 3 of Bakuman, where he was arguing with an editor, and he was like, "Hey, I've noticed that this series is near the back of the magazine because they when they get the reader survey, they order the series in the next issue according to their placement in the survey." And he argued that that's kind of a really stupid idea because then people will whether consciously or unconsciously see them at the back and think, oh, these must not be very good, so they're not worth reading, or they will mentally compare them to the thing they already read And he argued that why not just have them order all of the series? And then the editor fired back, well, that's a lot of effort to put on the reader's half. Like 20 series, some of which they might not even read or be interested in, they'll kind of be at an unfair, I guess, disadvantage, because if they don't like a genre in the magazine, then it's just asking a lot from the reader when asking for like 3 or 4 of like, what were your favorite chapters in the magazine this week? That's just a lot more reasonable. But I did hear he did have this one interesting suggestion where instead of having them ordered according to the survey, they just shuffle them around. And, you know, because it can maybe stop that whole mentality of this is at the back, so it must be bad.
I mean,
Because
I wouldn't
in the magazine that have had like such good potential, but they were just canceled. Like I remember this one where it was like people were descended from Shinto gods, and everyone got a weird power. Like one guy could turn animals into guns, and one guy could shoot shadows as like sword beams. Like that was a cool power. One guy could turn people into kanji. Like that was neat.
You get a little bit sidetracked.
I know, but it's just I don't think having them order every series in the magazine would be a good idea, because that's just a lot to ask of them.
You know there is a table of contents at the beginning of every magazine.
Yeah, but you're also asking them to judge all 20 series against each other in order to rank them. And some of them might not even be part of the regular lineup. I guess you could just exclude them from the survey. But it would still just be way too much to ask of your average reader. Because like that would probably give them less results, because it would just, they either wouldn't fill it out entirely, or they just wouldn't bother, because it's like, oh, I have to rank all 20 chapters. I didn't read all 20 chapters. I don't read a number of these series, so I'm not going to bother.
I don't even understand why there is a popularity rating in the first place.
So they can know which ones to keep in the magazine and which ones to just be like, people don't like this. Or maybe it's also to be like, okay, readers aren't really liking what you're doing here. Let's try and figure out a way for you to like improve it.
Okay, so here's the problem though, and this is always the problem. A good magazine curates its content themselves and not lets the reader decide. Like, if I would make a magazine where I present short stories, I would read through the short stories and decide what is good, what is bad. That's the job of an editor. Putting that on an audience is always unfair, because that's kind of weird, and also never gives them a lot of opportunity, because people tend to like the things they already like. Therefore, we will never give new things a shot. That's one of the reasons why in some cases it's often important to have things in your work, in your stuff, that is not necessarily already popular, because otherwise you don't give it a chance. The fact is that Shonen Jump just puts already too much work on the audience instead of themselves, because they just don't really care about the concept of storytelling, but rather just how many copies they can sell. And they just put this as a system so they can have series that are not popular out. But the problem is, if you have 3 popular series already that are already massive and are not going to be canceled, why even put them on the popularity card in the first place? Because they just take votes away from series that don't get anything. It's a very clear logical issue that they don't really thought through, and their tradition is basically holding them hostage to never actually create something interesting. That's also the reason why they probably panic all the time if some of their long-running series comes to an end. You saw that when Naruto was for first time announced to be ending. You know, the creator said, it's going to be ending soon, and immediately the whole staff of Shonen Jump was backpedaling and saying like, yeah, no, it's guaranteed to run for at least 2 more years. And like, you really see how much panic they had that moment. That they were like, oh no, we have nothing to do if it really ends next week. What are we going to do? Well, you know, because they don't really think ahead. That's really the big issue here. They don't think ahead, and they don't curate effectively.
Yeah, but rush stuff like Guardian of the Witch.
Right, because if you curate this a little bit more, if you look for creators who know, okay, we can create a schedule, we are already having a good idea here, we can do something like that. But no, you are always looking for the most new and popular artists, but you don't see if they actually are made for that life cycle. We saw so many artists basically just mentally die from the stress of working for Shonen Jump because it's just like it's an immense workload. You can't just put this on a person without being prepared for it. You need to be the kind of crazy, productive person that makes this work. And not many people are.
You need to be self-motivated enough to do it, and
Yeah.
and not only that, but it's not even just a matter of like self-motivation, but also to have a lot of this stuff planned out in advance so that you're not coming up with stuff on the spot, because that's usually how stories turn out poorly. Like obviously stories change over time, like and you're not going to have a good story if you come up with something ahead of time and then you just adhere to that plan rigidly, because that's not going to work either. Obviously there's going to be some stuff where you're going to come up with a better idea at some point, and then you're going to have to find a way to reincorporate it, and there's a lot of variables that go into it, but there should at least be a baseline of like, okay, this is like the overarching story of like what we're going to go for. But like,
You should
what
at
I
least have an end goal set up.
yeah, like what tends to happen with a lot of these is there's like an initial good idea and they run with it, but then they don't think about like, well, how we're going to end this. And that's why a lot of these stories, on top of being like rushed out the door, end up with like really flaccid, unsatisfying endings, because they just had that initial good idea but didn't know where it was going to end up in the end.
Oh, maybe that's why Takamagahara got canceled. That stinks.
That's kind of the problem. On top of that, Shonen Jump likes to revert to their old habits. Just turn it into Dragon Ball has been a classic attitude. Just
I remember this one time when I heard that Akira Toriyama was behind on his art, so he just didn't want to color in Goku's hair. So he made it blonde and claimed that it was, he's Super Saiyan now. That's totally not a thing I made up to save money and time. And I think I blame his laziness for the fault of so many lazy shonen writing nowadays.
No. Okay. That's not true at all. I think
it is probably not, but I mean, I think
it's not. If you read Dragon Ball, you know that he established the concept of Super Saiyan pretty early on in the arc, and know that it's not just something he maybe had not put the physical look of it down at that point, and maybe it came from a lazy piece of artwork he created early on. That is a possibility, but it's not how they established it in story. Toriyama is not good at planning ahead of things. That is a true thing, but it's not that this was not set up effectively. So
I'm really strongly against accusing creators of being lazy in most cases.
I didn't mean it like that. I just
but
sorry.
I'm against it because we don't know the circumstances. We don't know what they were going through. We don't know what they were thinking. And it's really unfair to go like, oh, it was just lazy. Like, more often than not, accusing creators of being lazy is in and of itself lazy, because you're not putting the time to think about like what were the circumstances that led to something being the way that it is. You're just going for the easy answer of like, well, it was just laziness. Well,
sorry about that. I didn't mean it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to come down on you. It's a pet peeve of mine. I really don't.
I know. I didn't mean he was being lazy. I mean, just that was my bad.
Yeah. On top of that, drawing a Super Saiyan is actually more effort than drawing Goku with his normal hair.
I guess because you have to add the hair details.
Yes, normally the detail in the hair of Goku, in Goku's hair, is way less. You can just make it mostly black with some slight white outlines. It's not that complicated. But a Super Saiyan hair is very spiky. He needs many different aspects. So it's not. You cannot call this a lazy thing. It's not possible to describe it.
We're not talking about Dragon Ball.
But yeah, it's one of the things that you can see with many series where they revert to classic things because people say like that. Like whenever something gets a tournament arc, I start groaning, especially if it's something that doesn't should have a tournament arc in it. It's not that it's necessarily bad. It's just I
I
don't
remember
know
the Dark
why.
Tournament. That was you remember Yu Yu Hakusho?
I never watched that. That's sad. I can't tell you.
I like Yu Yu Hakusho.
I mean, technically, there's nothing wrong with a tournament arc. It's just that I have seen so many that really don't work or fall into the trappings of the tropes, like when it's get like a lot of commenting on fights and just in establishing new characters that you really need a lot more time for. It's sometimes
If a
you,
tournament
you
arc is done well, it can actually be a pretty good highlight. Like again, the Dark
yeah.
Tournament arc or whatever was in Hunter x Hunter. I don't remember what it was.
Hunter x Hunter has actually only aborted tournament arcs
Hmm. I
because
I only
seen
just
all of Hunter
started
x Hunter,
Hunter
so
x
I don't
Hunter
know.
recently.
yeah.
I saw the
And
first couple episodes, so I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of it because people have said many nice things about it. So
see, in Hunter x Hunter, they have only been like 2 tournament arcs, and both are aborted. They never come to a conclusion. The first one is at the end of a Hunter exam that gets immediately stopped. I'm not going to tell you how. And the second one is I think it's the Battle Tower, where we first learn about Nen abilities, and they only are here fighting for a moment. It's never really established in what order or something like that because it's an ongoing permanent fight that they have there, and they're only there to get a little bit of money and also learn about this Nen ability. And the moment they get everything they need, they just leave. There's never a conclusion to who's the new champion of a tournament, and that's kind of interesting because it wouldn't make sense. Gon is not interested in becoming the very best. He's interested in finding his dad.
Who's
That's
a jerk? His
and it's
dad.
like, but that's
Even if they do tournament arcs, like even the lazy series, not lazy, just the kind of like like the big mainstream series that are already doing pretty well. Even if they do like a bad tournament arc or like just a normal one, people are still gonna vote for them, and that again that takes attention away from the new series that have some interesting ideas. I remember this one series was about table tennis, and I thought that was a pretty cool series. They only translated the first 3 chapters, which I'm still mad about because it was a cool concept. Like I like table tennis. It's like a super crazy fast ball sport that you just like. It's really cool to see, and it would have been a neat subject for a manga. It had like fan service. It had a funny main character who just like acted ultra serious, but like he got crazy nosebleeds when he saw the fans. It was kind of funny to see him do that. But then like when you actually like throw down in table tennis, it was cool. But then it got canceled. I remember Mononofu, that got canceled. I remember Double Taisei, that got canceled because they had really neat concepts and I feel like being in the middle of all those big popular series, again, like even stuff like Promise Neverland, Yuki Yuna and the Hot Springs. There's another one that I can't remember, but it's just really hard for those new, unique ideas, or even just like normal ideas by newer creators that might have something interesting to add to the typical formula to like actually get off the ground because they have to compete with all that crazy stuff. I mean, granted, some of them ended, some of them are wrapped up. Kimetsu no Yaiba ended, Yuna ended, Neverland ended, Food Wars ended, I think. Yeah, that ended.
wow.
again.
Yeah, it's nice to know when a series like ends on its own rather than
Yeah,
just like being shoved out the door. That doesn't happen enough.
Yeah, but you kind of have to wonder, like, how exactly would they determine if they just like got rid of popularity surveys entirely and relied entirely on the editorial staff to make their like determine what new series get made and what series get canceled? How would you determine when you would end a series, because like you wouldn't know how the fans feel about it until like you publish a volume of the graphic novel and see how well it sells. Like even if just like from the business decision, that would give them longer to go for, because of the first volume's like 7 chapters, I think.
You understand that they have more feedback than just the cards. You know that they get a lot of fan posts and letters.
I know, but that's like a really direct way to just
Yeah, but
get
that's important. I think the problem is if you're convinced that what you have at your hands is a good work, you're saying like, okay, I'm going to do this. The reason why things in magazines exist is because they're interesting. They're enjoyable. And the fact is that if you have something like One Piece, you will always sell. The question so is not like why. People are drawn to your stories. If you want to have feedback, you ask the people. If you're convinced that your story is good, what you publish is good, then you publish it. If you want to have feedback on that, put on AMAs, talk about people. If you really want to have surveys, you can have them, but make sure that these surveys contain more information or what's going on. Or if you want, just say straight up that you make only contracts over a certain amount of time and only extend these contracts if a series works well. You know, like that's a system that the creator can say, okay, I have, like, let's say we make 6-month contracts for Shonen Jumps.
That's a bit,
You know?
maybe like until the first volume, maybe volume or 2 is out.
Why not? It's not important. It's an arbitrary number. The point is that if you make contracts only that long, then you have first, you don't have that long of a commitment time. You know, if you're really going for the first volume, that's like what, 12 chapters?
It's like 7. I mean, at least the ones that get compiled into the first volume. I think by the time it's published, it might be 16. I'm not entirely sure.
The point is, it's only about the amount of a volume, like because in a volume you can finish a story. I think that's possible. So,
Yeah,
so the idea is, so if you make only contracts till the first volume is full, then you know you have the writer who sits there. Okay, so I have that amount of chapters I can work with to create my story. That already is.
Build it up. Build up my story.
So and with that, you already know, okay, I have a definitive endpoint if it doesn't work out. If they say, no, that's not what we're searching for, okay, I can work that. You have a structure you can put in. You can say like, okay, I have that many chapters. And you say like, okay, I want to work at the last chapter first or something in the middle, or want to go there and then fill it up with the panels in between how I feel like it. You give the people a limit, but it's a definitive limit, so you know what you can work with. And so you can create a story in a frame that at least comes to a decent conclusion, and you know what to act. And if you say like, okay, if it runs good, I can get the next chapter. So I could write it in a way that I could end it here, but I also could continue it. Or I write it in a way that it seems like this is the moment it could continue, and say like, and do it like a sequel bait and say like, hey, maybe the volume sells exceptionally well even after I'm gone, and the readers want more, they can demand it. You know?
I don't know. I feel like that would be. I don't know if that would work. I mean, maybe it will.
I mean, that's usually how it works out for many stories, you know? Like in comic books, this is a thing. You say like, okay, we make the series, we say like we want to make a mini series, 4 issues, and make a full story. That's how we go, and done. That's usually gives the people a lot time and effort to say what you have, because working with clear terms is better. If then it ends up and say like, yeah, my story needs a little bit more, getting an extra issue out is not a big deal, because it's like, yeah, it sells decently well and you did good. Yeah, why not? You get a 5th issue or a 6th issue if you want. And that's kind of how it goes. You can gauge it a little bit more if you work with definitive terms.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure that would work with a regularly published magazine.
I mean, it worked out for magazines all the time. Like, how do you think that storytelling magazines to this day still exist? Like, it's not. The problem is you look in this in a vacuum. How can this work from the perspective only of Japan, but even in Japan, that's not how this works out often.
No, I'm just thinking about it because, like, I kind of understand why they do the reader survey and why they, have the system that they do. But I just think, because, like, if a series isn't very popular with fans, like, let's say you have a series that an editor thought has a good idea, but then it turns out to not be that popular. It keeps going down in the reader, like, people clearly don't like it. The author clearly, like, didn't have any plan for going past the first, like, 3 chapters or something. It's just not as good as they thought it would be. So you either have the idea where, okay, we'll just go through, like, the first volume, and then maybe it'll pick up, but then it doesn't pick up. You kind of have to be like, okay, we can either put more resources into this series that is clearly failing and isn't going to be a good investment, or we can just, like, cancel it and we can let the artist move on and do another project, and we can bring in something else. Like,
you understand they
kind of sense, but then I realized that that's also a reason why a lot of good series that could be really cool just.
The problem you have is that it doesn't matter. Shonen Jump publishes every week anyway. The investment is always the same. It doesn't change. The magazine comes out every week, no matter how popular a series is or not. Because in the end, the series that are already popular are what sells the magazine in the first place. So it doesn't matter. You can have a lot of free slots of content that even if nobody watches, you can still look. You can have the most craziest series. You could even say, like, yeah, this artist isn't good. This artist makes terrible stories, but we like him and we want to have him around, and he has its series and it's never going to get canceled. And it wouldn't matter because they could put it purposefully at the back end and it would still work. Shonen Jump would still make money and it wouldn't matter at all. The effort is always the same.
All right. Like, at least take what?
I think at the end of the day, like, we can postulate on what would be like an ideal situation.
Yeah.
But at the same time, reality would get in the way of what we want as an ideal, and that's just something you need to deal with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it sucks, right? Like, we would want things to be a certain way because then, it'd be the best case scenario, but the best case scenario, it may not necessarily be the most realistic one.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's unrealistic. I think it's just that even if we had these ideas and could convey them to the right people, it is up to these people to make the decision. It's not up to us to make these decisions. It's out of our hands. We can only want the best possible thing and argue for certain things, but if the other side doesn't want it, we can do whatever we want. And that's kind of the point. But I think we can still learn of that in many ways because, hey, maybe somebody says, like, okay, I want to make something like that for a different place. Like they want to do a comic magazine or something like that, or a story magazine. Now somebody has these kind of ideas and can consider them. It's a thought game. We only consider what's going on. We experiment in our heads.
I'm not necessarily saying that what's being said is like unreasonable or completely unrealistic. Just that, like, the reason something isn't ideal is because it's not easy to do.
It's not feasible. It's kind of like that idea of a utopia, but it's just like BioShock, they tried to make a utopia, but, human nature gets in the way of utopia being a thing, which is why
I feel like BioShock was more of a commentary on how Ayn Rand was crazy and her idea was stupid.
That place would even if it works perfectly well, it would never be a utopia.
Right. That was kind of BioShock's point, was like, Ayn Rand, you suck, and here's why. Like,
I doubt she ever played the game.
Well, we played the game.
Yeah, I did play BioShock.
Yeah. But, like, what if they just they could make small changes so that smaller artists or, like, newcomers at least have a chance to gain some traction with their weird ideas. Like, you could take out the series from the reader survey that clearly aren't going to be canceled. Black Clover, One Piece, My Hero Academia, Jujutsu Kaisen. I think that would, but then you kind of have to wonder, like, how exactly would they determine when they can take it off the reader survey? Like, when
They can
it's
decide it whenever they want. They are the people in power. They can make that decision. If they and the point is, they have no incentive. Honestly, they really have no incentive for that. They can decide whenever they want, as long as they have popular series and the magazine sells. They can do whatever they want. Only if the magazine sales start to stagnate or go down, they need to adjust things. That's kind of a point. They have no incentive to make it more interesting, I think.
what's that saying? Like, competition is good for the consumer or something like that?
I mean, if you buy the same magazine, there is no competition. One Piece is not competing with My Hero Academia in the same magazine
I guess so.
because it's always the same price.
I guess the thing that we're talking about here is that it would be nice if newer series could get a little more traction, if they had a little more time to build themselves up and didn't have to adhere so rigidly to the conventions of a magazine like Shonen Jump or Shonen Sunday or Ribbon or Chow or Margaret or I'm naming just like random magazines I can think of. But a lot of the time they do that so that they can at least get a some kind of grasp on some kind of fan base and hopefully stick around until they do, what they actually want to do. Like Black Clover was rumored to have done. Like they made it super generic on purpose so that they could build a fan base and then just do whatever. That's a nice thing. But I think the thing is just like it's a system that they've held on to for a while. And if they do change it, it could just be like small things here and there, and it could give newcomers a better chance to actually get a series going, but they're probably not going to. Maybe I should start my own magazine. That'd be cool.
Sure, but in the end, I think the online distribution will make it more easier to get information like how many read the series, how many rate the series. That
How
gives
many people would buy the volume if we published it in English instead of blue balling you by only giving you 3 chapters?
because that's the kind of thing. Online distribution makes this far easier.
Yeah.
Just saying. So eventually there will be a change, I think. But
maybe that'll help them get like more feedback, and maybe that'll help newer creators. And all I can hope is that if a newer creator doesn't, if they don't take off, I hope that their next series does better, and I hope they learn from their experience, and that's all I can really hope for.
That's all of us can really hope for, that they can learn and improve and to grow.
Yeah. And also just take One Piece off the reader survey. It doesn't matter. Oda's going to be there for a couple more years. You might as well not even let people vote for him. We already know One Piece is the best. We don't need to keep being reminded of it. So yeah. And I think that's all we got. Thank you for joining us, Daniel Santos of the channel Daniel Santos.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, you got any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like Guardian of the Witch is kind of like reflective of a lot of the issues that were discussed. That Shonen Jump, it's kind of like pumping these things out like a machine and then canceling them when when really they should be given the chance to shine that they need. Because I've said it more than once, but it had the building blocks for something good, but it just wasn't given a chance to breathe. And maybe on one hand, that's the fault of the creator being an amateur, but it also isn't helped by Shonen Jump's structure. And
especially with Black Clover running in the magazine, another fast-paced, like basic fantasy action series, like that probably didn't help.
Yeah, so we can only hope that Shonen Jump will eventually realize before it's too late that hey, the way things are going is not the best, and that they could make strides to improve.
All right, that's a nice note to end off with. I think this is like the first episode in a while where we've actually reached some kind of cohesive conclusion. Maybe I'm not sure. Nightmare, you got anything to end us off with?
Yeah, don't read Ayn Rand. It's a terrible idea.
Yes, I agree with that. Objectivism
Alrighty
is
then.
stupid.
I guess that's all for tonight. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.